Hello again, everyone. At the end of what I think for pretty much all of us has been a very, very difficult week, today's scriptures have a lot to offer us. The first reading from the second letter to Timothy, Psalm 71, and a very familiar, very important passage from the Gospel of Mark. In his letter to Timothy, the young bishop, Paul tells him, admonishes him, proclaim the word when it is convenient and when it is inconvenient. That's his ministry. That's his role. No matter what happens, proclaim the word. That's our call too. We, all of us by our baptism, are challenged and called by God to proclaim the word with our lives, with the way we live, with what we say, with what we believe, and how we act on those beliefs. We're called to be a community that proclaims the word every day. Sometimes it's convenient when we gather together to celebrate the Eucharist and joy fills St. Camilla's Church. It is convenient. It is easy to see the source of our faith. And then other times it can be very, very inconvenient. It can be difficult to hold on to our faith and to proclaim our faith strongly. And we see that in the challenges of this week. We're still surrounded by this dreadful virus, and many in our community are suffering, and many in our community still grieve. And on top of that, we've been reminded again that systemic racism and violence still abound in our society. And it hurts us. It hurts us in our faith. It hurts us in our hearts, because as followers of Jesus, we know this is wrong and we want to take a stand. This is difficult. This is a troubling hour. What do we do? How do we find the way to give voice to what is good and denounce what is evil? So sickness, economic hardship, racism, violence are all around us this week. And yet we proclaim the faith with our lives. We proclaim the word with our lives. As Paul says, we run our race. We keep the faith. That's his challenge to Timothy. And, well, we may be tempted, I think, at times to say, I've run my race. Just like Paul says at the end. Paul is nearing the very end of his ministry, and he says, I've run the race. I've kept the faith. I've kept on to the course. And there's a little bit of, well, now, Timothy, your turn to this. And we may be tempted to do that sometimes. We've run our race. Whew, let someone else do it. But we get up and do it anyway, because it is still our race. It is still our faith. It's still ours to keep. We can't give up. We can't walk away from the needs that we see around us. But we can, as the psalmist says, sing of God's salvation. We take joy in knowing that in the midst of all of the things that we need to do and the word we need to preach both conveniently and inconveniently, or as other translations would say, in season and out, we're always graced. And we're always filled with God's salvation. And that's a cause for song. And then we can look at the gospel today. We probably have all known this gospel story since we were very, very small children. The widow's mite. But there, even in Jesus' time, there were those around them in the community who asserted themselves and showed us their power and showed us their status and made great displays of how important they were. If they had cameras, they would have had photo ops back then. But there were those who just let everyone know who, at least in their mind, was boss. And then comes the poor widow. Unassuming, quiet. She drops 2 small coins into the temple coffer. She doesn't have a lot of cash to give, but she shares. She does what she can do with what she has. And at times, I think, in difficult times when we're preaching the word, maybe you were out on the streets this week, maybe you were at the food pantry, in whatever way you served, in whatever way you prayed, in whatever way, all of us have proclaimed the word where we could. We may feel like we're not making much progress. But the great message is we don't have to on our own. We have to make the progress we can make. Our 2 coins, our 2 cents, our might is what we have to give. And that's what we're called to do. That poor widow may not have changed the attitude of a single one of those scribes hanging around at the temple. But she did keep the faith. She kept it generously. And so do we. My sisters and brothers, may the Lord give us peace.